everyone's doing porn. So how can you differentiate yourself and get to the top and make the most money? And it's having to be extreme, and that's really, you see it in the porn industry in general of like the extreme content that needs to be made and the appeal of it. It always starts with something that's simple, and then it always escalates to something more and something dangerous. And now you have these big faces and characters who are doing extreme sport because they need to put themselves at the top as quick as possible. So this is why you have the Bonnie Blues and Lily Phillips, though, is because it's like, if I'm going to go into this, I have to differentiate myself from the rest so that I can reach the top. And, that could be my selling point, and people will gravitate towards me so I could bypass these other millions of people who are trying to do this.
Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Can you start by sharing a bit about yourself and what led you to join OnlyFans? What was appealing to you about the platform at the time?
Yeah, so I joined kind of when like COVID was just ending. And I was in college kind of shut down, everything went online. And during that period of time, I ended up going to Miami and moving there just because Miami was the only city that's open. And Miami's also a pretty big hub for the OnlyFans industry, especially now. So I think just being subjected in that environment, and I was also like, what, like 19, 20, and it was just new. And it seemed like, okay, I can make money this way and I can live this lavish lifestyle that I was around, and I don't have to, like ask my parents for anything. I can travel, I can have freedom, I can have time. And for me, my logic, at least at this time, was if I just have money coming in, basically doing nothing, then I can just focus on my dreams. I don't have to, work a 9 to 5 and have time be taken away. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. It's going to be like a stepping stone into my future. Everything's going to be so easy breezy, beautiful. And that's really what appealed me to it, was more the freedom of time and just money coming in without having to really like think or do anything.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what type of content did you plan to post initially, and how did that evolve over time?
Yeah, so the first thing I did was I scraped my Instagram of all my bikini photos and I just put them on there. And then I also had a vegan page when OnlyFans TV, this was like the first time it came out. So OnlyFans kind of existed, and then OnlyFans TV came out like a few years later. And so I was like one of the first people to join OFTV, and I was just posting like food content. I was posting, smoothies and this like healing lifestyle. So that's kind of what I started. And then I think, the whole industry just escalated super fast. And, you see it. But at that time, I was not comfortable with, doing anything explicit. So I was like, okay, like, we'll go from bikinis to lingerie, and then maybe we'll do implied. And, I wasn't doing anything explicit. I never had any desire to. It wasn't, something that I was like always dreaming of doing. And I actually quit OnlyFans after that because I just felt uncomfortable, like the men making all their comments, and like everyone just started to want like more, explicit, aggressive content. And I was like, what? No, I'm not going to do that. So this isn't for me. So I actually left for a period of time because of that reason. And then I had a manager, reach out to me, I want to say like August of 2022. And like we were kind of just back and forth. And he's like, listen, like if you do a certain type of content, like I promise you, you will make at least 50 grand a month. And even before, I was like not making that. Like I was still making money, but it wasn't, 50 grand a month. So to a 20-year-old, I was like, oh, okay. And then actually my contract, the deal was that I would have to do partner content, in order to hit that mark. So that was kind of my like, all right, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to go back into this, it's going to have to be full out. And, at that time I was just like, okay, I'll just do it. And that's kind of what tracked it into that. And the more explicit side of OnlyFans.
Yeah. Can you share a bit about how your experience in OnlyFans compared to what you expected it to be when you initially joined and even when you took the break and decided to come back? How did your actual experience compare to your expectations?
I just expected to kind of go in, not really care, just be posting content. I mean, I loved content creation in general. So I was like, okay, I can get like paid for that. And I just figured I would be making so much money, none of it would even matter. And I think that's really the mindset that a lot of people go in is they're like, the money is almost this like Novocaine for you because you're like, okay, well, I'm making so much money. I'm rich now. I have all this freedom and I can do whatever I want. So it's not as bad. So that was kind of my expectation, and I think nobody around me at that time really cared either. Obviously, the managers don't care. They're like, "You're doing so good. This is so great." And then I think also I had friends that were in the industry and, they didn't really have their coming to light moment either. So everyone's kind of collectively like, "Oh my god, we're making so much money and it's so fast and we're so young and now, we have all of this freedom." And I think then from that point it starts to decline, but it takes a minute, you get that, like, dopamine rush at first.
Right. And that's a pretty common story that we have heard from individuals who have joined
Mhm.
OnlyFans or young people who are saying, I don't need to go to college. I can just join OnlyFans and make lots of money. And then
Yeah.
often the reality of the money made isn't even what it's kind of proposed to be often or sold to be.
Mhm.
We often hear from people who say they hear how glamorous OnlyFans is, how the glamorous the lifestyle can be. There's only a very small percentage of creators that are actually making money.
Mhm.
The average creator isn't making a lot of money. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, everybody lies. Money is the easiest way to pull people into something. That's why you see so many people selling courses. That's why you see, they sell the lifestyle and that's the selling point. But the money, yeah, I mean, you could make a lot of money years ago because it was fresh and it was new. But now it's a lot harder. The competition's harder because there's just so many people doing it. And I mean, yeah, no, I think the average is like $180 a month for creators. So I think now it's just so oversaturated. No, you're not going to make, 100 grand a month just from starting, unless you already have a really big platform or you're famous. And that's where they see like, celebrities making what, $9 million a month? I don't know. And it's like, okay, well, you're not them. And, not even trying to be rude, but like a small town girl, you're not going to be making $9 million a month on OnlyFans. So I think that's just the misconception. And that's really what hooks people is just selling them this. Well, you'll make so much money. And it's like, no, your manager will make a lot of money. Yes, I was living in a 6 grand a month apartment, but my manager was living in a $50,000 a month mansion with his Lambo and his Maybach and all his cars. So where is that too? That money's not yours. And I think that's also where people they get confused is like at least half your money is going to be taken from you off the bat. That's every contract. But yeah, your money's not yours.
Yeah.
So most of it's going to go away to taxes, to bills, to upkeeping a lifestyle and to a manager.
Yeah. And it kind of takes the glamour out of the idea of what it can be when you
Yeah,
really
like if
see it for
if
what
you're
it
living in a
is.
penthouse paycheck to paycheck, you're still living paycheck to paycheck. So there's a lot of upkeep to the lifestyle. And that's
Yeah.
why you see so many people who go broke trying to prove that they're rich, and that's the easiest way to go broke. So I just always say if someone's trying to sell you a lifestyle in your face, they're probably lying. They're probably not making as much money as they say they are. And it's just not as easy as it was to make money like that on this platform. There's too much noise.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of the people we've spoken with who have been in similar positions as you have talked about the pressure to escalate the type of content that they post over time.
Mhm.
Have you seen or experienced that progression yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think going from making vegan content to going and making like full on porn is a pretty big jump. So, yeah, I definitely think the pressure is there. I think the pressure is there because of the money. And at least for me it was because of the money. It's like, okay, you're like, okay, well if I do this I'll make more money. And then you make the money and you're like, okay, so maybe it's not as bad. And like I am finding this thing, and it's that, like, just temptation of just constant greed and wanting more, and so as they're wanting more explicit content, you're just wanting more money, and it's just it's rough.
Yeah. Because over time, you can't make the same money doing vegan content, for example, or
Well,
you have
yeah,
to
and
escalate.
yeah, and the industry has changed so much since I first joined, and I think that's really why I'm very open about it is because 'cause I'm like, yes, I was making 10K a month off vegan content, that's impossible now. Now so, it's not the same industry that it was in 2022 or 2021. It's completely different now, and now you have to do explicit content because that's the majority.
Do you think there's been a lot of news about creators like Bonnie Blue or Lily Phillips? Do you
Mhm.
think that their stories reflect a wider pattern of what happens on platforms like OnlyFans?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like finding your selling point and, now you have everybody is making boy girl content, girl content, everyone's doing porn. So how can you differentiate yourself and get to the top and make the most money, and it's having to be extreme, and that's really, you see it in the porn industry in general of like the extreme content that needs to be made and the appeal of it always starts with something that's simple and then it always escalates to something more and something dangerous, and that's really what escalates all of these other things like pedophilia, trafficking, it goes into a whole different world, and it's the same thing on OnlyFans, and I think that's what people are maybe now just learning is because it was thrown in your face as this social platform, even though all their revenue is coming from sex work, but it works the same. So, yes, the pressure to escalate your content is there. The pressure of people wanting more is there. And, now you have these big faces and characters who are doing extreme sport because they need to put themselves at the top as quick as possible. So yeah, it's not really shocking. It's dangerous and that's the slippery slope that you go down.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned what that type of content is fueling. We often talk
Mhm.
about how porn is fueling the demand for sex trafficking and sexual violence and sexualized racism and objectification and this slew of issues, societal issues that so many people are dealing with today.
Mhm.
And to your point earlier, even if someone maybe goes into this consensually, just taking note of what this content is fueling and how others are being harmed as well,
Mhm.
because all of these things are so interconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's just another breeding ground for all of these things to exist on. It's the same system, it's just wrapped in a different box. And, it's still fairly new, even though it's been around. So there's still a lot of like research. There's way more research on street prostitution than there is now on OnlyFans. So it's gonna be a process, but yeah, that's why these, conversations are important.
Yeah, absolutely. How did being on OnlyFans affect the way that you saw yourself?
So I suffered from identity dissonance really badly. I think because I was very separated from the industry. I didn't wanna, collab with people. Like, after my one collab, I was like, "All right, never doing that again." Hated that. So I kind of was living like 2 lives. I knew that this was my income, this was fueling my lifestyle. Everybody else was like, "Oh my god, she's able to, like, go to Italy for a month, that's so cool." And then I was also, still being true to myself and working on my own projects and, trying to launch other businesses to get myself out of the industry and replace that income. So it was definitely odd because there was this character that existed that was so, such a big part of my life and was like funding my whole life. And then there was me. And so I think a lot of people were like even confused when they would talk to me. And then I'd be like, oh, yeah, well, like I do OnlyFans. And like that's how I'm able to live here. And they're like, what? Like, so it didn't make sense to others. And then it really didn't make sense to me because I was like, yeah, this isn't me, but she exists and I have to play her. And it's like acting. And then you get like lost in the character. You have to pull back and then you go home to different things and you have all these masks on. And I think over time that really weighs on you.
Yeah, because you're putting on this persona and playing this character,
Mhm.
but it also is physically you showing up and physically you being disseminated online in this
Mhm.
way. And so I can imagine there's some cognitive dissonance in reconciling those two personas
Yeah.
together.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, and that's kind of what was like, I never watched my content, I never would look on my page. When I was deleting my page, I had to, like, delete a bunch of the photos because they didn't actually let me delete my page until, like, over a month later, which is a whole different story. But, yeah, so I think that was the first time I actually even saw, like, what was even being done and posted because I was like, "I don't even want to look at it. I don't wanna look at it, I don't wanna see it." It exists, but it's not me, and it was just, like, this thing, like, that was there, like, just like a pimple that just, like, wouldn't go away.
Yeah. How did being on OnlyFans impact your relationships or the way that people treated you?
It didn't really affect as much as I think people try to make it seem like it did. Because I think everyone kinda collectively is well, they're either lying to my face and telling me that they don't care and they actually do because 'cause they're just scared to tell me, or I think people are like, maybe this is a good thing." Like, if you're making so much money, we live in such, a money-based society now, and it's like, if you're making all this money, what does it really matter? So, I think that's kinda money really is, I think, the main source of people convincing themselves that maybe it's okay. But, yeah, I think my relationships, I'm lucky to have really strong friendships and strong family connections, so I don't think that changed how they viewed me. I think it was just a process of them trying to get me to remember who I was and being like, "Yeah, this isn't you, and this I'm not gonna judge you and, like, try to shame you to leave, but, like, you definitely should." I think romantic relationships was hard, but at least in my stance, I was already with somebody who was toxic. So I think this was a good leverage point for them to like go out and cheat and blame it on that. And it was really just an excuse. I don't think that was like genuine them not liking it. I said it before that I don't think men are ever going to want their girl to do this just because of that, like, territorial protectiveness. So, I think, no, they did not like it, but I think it was a good point for them to kinda be like, treat me like because of it.
Do you think that your friends and family really saw that there were kind of 2 of you? There was the character
Yeah.
you mentioned and then the you that they know?
Yeah, definitely. And they saw me, doing both. So it was kind of like, no wonder she's so stressed out and no wonder she's like going mental all the time is because it's like I had to do this and then I was doing this and it's like so much to keep up with. So yeah, I think they definitely saw that and I think that was like, whoa for them. But like what do you do, you know?
Yeah. What kind of safety concerns do creators face both online and offline?
Um, I think there's a really big I guess, point that people like to assume that OnlyFans is safer. In my opinion, though, it's actually more unsafe because you don't know who your enemy is. When you're exposed like that online and everything is filtered through social media. So you're on Reddit platforms, you're on, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you're on everything. You don't know who has their eyes on you. And it's this specific industry that pulls in some of the worst people. So, I have friends who have been stalked. They've had people break into their homes. They've had people send stuff to their homes. Like everything's so public now, and you don't even know who it's coming from, until they're sitting in your living room, and that's just terrifying in itself. Also, the messages, I get messages of men still, they're like, "I know you did OnlyFans, and I hate you, and I hate everyone," and you don't people are so insane nowadays. You literally have no idea, people get death threats over, wearing a shade of blush that people don't like. So, you really don't know, and I think that's what makes it so unsafe is you're not only attracting just the bottom of the barrel type of human, but you don't even know where it's coming from.
How do you think platforms like OnlyFans contribute to misconceptions about what's safe and empowering, especially for women?
I mean, empowerment is their whole selling point, It's, well, take the power back because men are gonna sexualize you anyways, so you might as well get paid for it. And I think that people don't really realize that they're playing the same game they tried to leave. And just because, if you're playing chess, just because you're on one side of the board or the other, you're still playing chess. And, I think empowerment is the new fancy word that people like to use. They'll just throw, well, it's empowering to do this. It's empowering, to treat people like this. It's empowering to whatever. And it's just a lie. It's a marketing tactic. It's avoiding accountability of what's truly happening. It's presenting a present in front of you that has nothing in it. And there's nothing safe and empowering about it, you know? Like, it's just you're not protecting yourself from anything. A lot of it, you just turn bitter and rageful because you're like, oh my God, you're exposed to these men who, obviously they're just sexualizing you and objectifying you. That's the whole game. And then you kind of go out in the world and you're like, oh, so all men are like this. And you don't see how it like seeps into other aspects of your life. And, it's just a feeling overall. And I don't think there's anything empowering of having to take off your clothes. And I think this whole, I think women in general, when you're going from like girlhood to womanhood, it's uncovering this whole message of like male attention means that they like me. And I think a lot of it is playing on, the victims of believing that validation. And if I look hot and I get likes, that I'm worth something. And it's kind of exploiting that inner wound as well.
Right. And you mentioned earlier as well that, if you're kind of staying stuck in something like OnlyFans because you don't know how you're going to replace the income, if
Hmm.
you're kind of staying in something because of the financial strain you may be experiencing or other external circumstances that are keeping you stuck in this, is it really enthusiastic consent or is it a
Hmm.
means to an end, right? And so gauging empowerment in that way as well, I think is so important. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Hmm. Yes, of course.
We hear about parasocial relationships often when we talk about platforms like OnlyFans. How do
Hmm.
parasocial relationships affect people who are posting on platforms like this?
I mean, I think that's the most dangerous part of the industry is the parasocial relationship. You have these people who believe that they are truly dating you and they are truly married to you and that you truly like them and love them. And if you keep convincing them of something, they're going to really start to believe it. And that's where you see it escalate into the violence and the stalking and the breaking in and, the sending things and the threats because to them, you're conditioning them to think that this is real. And, you have people who are playing a character and they think they're talking to the girls and they're not talking to the girls. They're talking to somebody from overseas or some guy from the Philippines and they have no idea. And so they're they're being fed their delusions and they're being affirmed in their delusions. And I think even overall on social media, you can see what people do when they're affirmed in their own delusions and how it escalates into a bigger issue that goes off the platform and it becomes a societal issue. So, yeah, I think that's the most dangerous part about it is the chatting and the forming of a connection that causes people to really start doing, heinous things.
What kind of mental and emotional toll can that kind of attention take?
Um, I think you're just scared, I know a lot of girls, most girls actually don't. You kind of retreat into your home because you're like, I don't know who knows me. I don't know who doesn't know me. I don't know who's seen me. I don't know, So I think you get nervous and then you start to just hide. And, you're already dealing with your own thoughts and emotions about the whole thing and having to deal with, the thought of somebody out there stalking you, watching you, these obsessive people who you believe they're dating you. I think that's really scary. And, I also just want to mention that, like, this is where traffickers go to find victims. So it's like you're literally in the pot that they pick from. So you have no idea. And, like, it's already such a big issue. And now it's just, with girls who are already doing it, those are easier victims to go pull from. They're already conditioned to believe certain things. So, I think that's even the most dangerous part or one of the most dangerous parts.
Yeah. What made you start questioning whether you wanted to stay in the industry?
Well, I always wanted to leave the industry, and that's where I thought this was a stepping stone for me, but there was no end game here. And I think that's also why I personally kept everything very separated because I was like, well, this isn't me. And I'm not staying in this. And I also, never fully dipped my toes in. Like, even towards the end for me, like everyone had social media platforms. I didn't really post on social media with it. My accounts were grown on the back end, which you can't do that anymore. But at that time, you were able to. And so that was how I kept everything, as separate as possible.
Difficult is it for someone to leave OnlyFans once they've built the following or signed contracts?
I mean, you're definitely not gonna leave without a fight, that's for sure. I'm still fighting certain things and I've been gone. But I mean, the management, they're gonna convince you of every reason why you shouldn't leave and why, you're never gonna be able to and no one's gonna hire you. You're never gonna make money like this. You're already damaged goods. And then if you're in a worst case, you're gonna get sued for whatever reason and you're going to be in a legal battle and people are going to be like, well, you signed a 2-year contract with me, so you have to work for 2 years. You cannot financially bind people in contracts to perform sex work for you, so hopefully that reaches the court system soon enough, because that's a big one that I think people are trying to push right now is like, well, you signed it and you said you would do this, so you have to do it. It's like, I don't have to do anything, especially because we're in the sex industry. These contracts, this is not like I'm doing marketing work for you. It works a little different. So, yeah, I think leaving is definitely not the easiest. You already have a mental toll and a mental battle, and then these people, they're gonna do everything in their power to make sure that you stay.
Yeah. Are there additional obstacles that people face when they try to walk away from OnlyFans, that others that you know have experienced or you yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with you buy yourself into a lifestyle that you have to upkeep. And that was a big thing for me and why I didn't fully leave until I came back home because I mean, I had bills that cost 10 grand a month. So that's another reason. And that's kind of what I've been hearing some creators come on is they're like, well, I just bought a $5 million house. So how am I going to afford my lifestyle still? If I'm not doing this. And, that's another one of the like wars you go through is like, okay, I now have all of these expenses and I have to upkeep with them and I don't have something yet that's going to replace that. So do I just burn my entire life to the ground? I mean, that's what I did, but I understand why some people wouldn't want to do that. So, yeah, I think that's another big reason why a lot of people just don't leave because they don't know what to do. And I think the whole world tells you that no one's going to want you now, no one's going to want to marry you, hire you, that you have like no skills and that your life is basically ruined and you made the worst decision. And I think that's what keeps people in the industry as well is because they don't really have hope for anything else.
Yeah. Can you share a bit about how stepping away from OnlyFans affected your life and your mental health?
Yeah, I feel like it's just been a weight off my shoulders. I feel like now I can fully just step into myself and just focus on myself. And I think a lot of at least my personal journey was that I just didn't believe in myself enough. And so I wanted that crutch of money. And, because I didn't trust that what I felt called to do would actually work out. So it was kind of like a buffer. And I think now, seeing that path completely just crash and burn, I'm like, okay, now I'm still stuck in my purpose and everything. So I must just go full force. So I think it's also been a very, like, you know, self transformation journey. And I just think now I'm personally way more confident than I was years ago making that decision. So that's also really helped. And yeah, I think just overall, I don't have to worry about this. I mean, I do have some lingering issues that I'm just like, this is so stupid. And I think now I feel very like empowered to talk about things. I think there's a lot of people in this industry who want me silent. Well, I know they want me silent because we were fighting. But so I think that being able to just come out and talk about it and, even helping one girl who's thinking of like, maybe this is the path for me, or, I've had people reach out to me about how to get out of their contracts and stuff. I also work with like one of the most amazing lawyers ever who's very called to this mission as well. So I think also doing that, I understand the purpose of that journey and being able to come back with all of this information and really just share it with people. I think that's been like the best. And that's, I don't know. It makes me almost like not grateful, but like kind of grateful that it happened. So yeah, I think my mental has been better, but no, I would never do that again. It's brutal.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that in that way. It's so important to hear from people like you who have experienced this
Mhm.
because I think something you said at the beginning of that was just noting that you didn't believe in yourself enough.
Mhm.
And this is really an industry that preys upon insecurity, right? It preys
For sure.
upon promising a better life if someone will do exactly, what is spelled out for
Yeah.
them. And I think it takes so much courage to be willing to look at that and confront that and say, this maybe actually isn't what I want to be doing. And then to
Mhm.
be so bold as to share your story now to help others know what this really is like to go through this experience, because this is
Mhm.
something that's being so normalized and pitched to young people as a
Yeah.
super easy,
So vague.
empowering, glamorous means to an end. And it's really not.
I mean, yeah, that was a lot of my journey. Like I think, it's really hard when people are like, "Oh, money won't make you happy." And I think everyone says it, but until you really live the experience of having everything and feeling empty, it's kind of hard to trust when people tell you that. And I think that's really what I've learned through this as well, is that all of the glitz and the glamour is not going to make you happy if you are doing something that you hate and you are empty and lacking purpose. And so that's also where the belief in myself has really come from, is like, okay, if I've been called to do something, I need to trust that calling. I need to trust myself instead of running away and believing that a lifestyle is going to make it better and that money's going to make it better. And that if I'm able to, go to these places and do these things, that I'm going to feel better, because you're going to do that and you're going to be miserable everywhere because you're not dealing with like the root of the problem.
Yeah. It's so important to have stories like yours shared. So, again,
Hmm.
I want to thank you for being willing to share yours
Yes,
with
of course.
us. What inspired you to start speaking out and sharing your experience publicly?
So I first talked about it December 2024. I posted a TikTok video, and I don't know what it was. I mean, I honestly think it might have been when Lily Phillips first came out with that video.
Right.
And just something about seeing it just sparked something in me, and I was like, "Oh my god, I got to talk about this." And I was so nervous, like I was so scared to talk about it. I was like, "Oh my god," cuz I was still in the industry. And I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be brutal." And I was also still heavily involved in some legal matters. So I was like, oh my God, this is just terrible. But I just felt the call on my heart, and I was like, okay, if I'm feeling called to speak now, then I have to speak now. And I wrestled with that for a little bit. And I remember even talking to my therapist about it, because I was like, how can I speak out about this when I'm still doing it? Like, how can I bite the hand that feeds me and then like go online? It was that
Yeah.
like guilty conscious type of thing. So
Yeah.
I think I just felt so called to do it that I was like, I feel called to do it for a reason. So I did it once, and that's what's kind of brought a lot of opportunities. And then I started just getting more comfortable with speaking about it. And I was like, just trying to be honest of like, okay, yes, I'm speaking about this, but like also understand like I am still in the industry for these specific reasons. And I do have an exit plan, but I wanna talk about this now. I mean, there's a lot to uncover. I could talk about it forever. So, yeah, I felt really called to do it, and I just trusted that call.
Yeah. Since you've started speaking out about this, are there specific stories or
Mhm.
scenarios that you've shared that are you found people are so surprised to learn?
I think pretty much everything. Like, everyone kind of just assumed that it was this great thing and that I was living this great life. And that's what it looks like on social media. Like I was traveling Europe all summer. I was living in a beautiful apartment. I was moving to different cities. I moved to 3 different cities in 3 months. So everyone was like, oh my God, she's really out here doing the absolute most. And so I think people were shocked to hear about what was going on behind the scenes. And yeah, I think pretty much everything
Yeah.
possible. Like the illusion was really there for people that everything was fine. And when I tell them, oh yeah, I hated that and I dealt with this, they're like, what? Like how you were doing all this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, but I was also dealing with this.
Yeah. What has healing looked like for you since leaving OnlyFans?
I think healing, you know, it's convincing yourself, or, not even convincing yourself, but undoing all of the lies that you have already told yourself. So that, like, I won't make money doing something that I love, or, you know, nobody's gonna love me after what I've done, or all men cheat, all men are like this. And having all of these ideas that come into your head after, being in this industry, I think it's been realizing and also being around different crowds and, not being around the people who are, necessarily in the industry or still kind of, glamored by it. So I think it's that, and just realizing like this isn't normal. And if it was normal, I would have felt good doing it, and trusting your body that was picking up on signals and, coming back into your body, and also removing all these ideologies that you've picked up. I think another big one is also this like feeling of money coming in fast, and understanding that, things that are going to be worth your while are going to take a long time. And that doesn't mean they're going to take 10 years, but it might take, a few months. And OnlyFans is so instant. So it's also breaking these bad habits of believing that everything should just come to me immediately and I should be able to do this immediately. And almost this like entitlement that you kind of pick up when you're in the industry because you're living in a fantasy land. So I think healing has really been like uncovering all of the lies. And then I've definitely gotten stronger like in my faith, which I don't push, Christianity or anything on anybody. I've always been very spiritual. So I've kind of just incorporated that into my spiritual life and into my spiritual practice, and trying to gain understanding of, my journey, my purpose here, why did I make these decisions? How can we not, stay clear of making decisions that are unaligned for me in the future, and making it just this self learning lesson, I think has also been very healing, and just learning how to understand yourself more. And then, yeah, I think body stuff is also important, because when I went into the industry, I was definitely not confident in my body. But I think being in front of a camera so much, you kind of either have to fake it or you just have to learn to love your body. And so that was probably one of the only, I guess, positives, was learning to love my body through that. So it's also just healing the relationship to your body, not and uncovering that like being an object thing, because I was like in the same mindset a lot of girls are in of I'm just an object, men just look at me to have sex with me, whatever. So it's uncovering that as well, and understanding that you're way more than a body, and learning to love your body and cherish your body in whatever way that looks, and keeping it away from men who are not going to treat you good in any capacity. So yeah, that's definitely been a healing journey as well.
Yeah, that's really beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that. For anyone who is considering joining OnlyFans, what would you say to them? What would you want them to know?
Just believe in yourself enough to do what you're actually called to do, and that this is not a crutch, this is not a buffer, this is not going to give you the lifestyle that you want. There is an end to this, and it's pretty fast, and you're going to end up having to start over anyways. So learn to, believe in yourself more, get comfortable with yourself, and play the long game. Things that start fast burn just as fast. And that was really, what this is. There's no shortcuts to success. And you hear that in everybody's story. And the people who do try to shortcut it, they end up losing everything and having to start over anyways. So just avoid that step. Avoid trying to, go around the maze, and just go right through it. And it's not going to be easy, and it's going to suck. And you're going to see people that it seems like everyone's moving faster than you. And it is what it is. That's part of it. But you have to do it right. And if you do it right the first time, it'll be done right the first time. And if you do it wrong and you try to, scam people shortcut, you're going to get pushed back to the back of the line. So I think that's pretty much, the biggest thing, especially with the girls that are really young. And also just the whole lifestyle is all fake. Everything's fake. People aren't as rich as they say they are. Everything's pretty boring. It's really not as glamorous as you think. I think the most glamorous thing to be is at peace with yourself. And that can look however you want it to look. You don't have to have a Birkin bag to be glamorous. You don't have to, be on a yacht to be glamorous. So just stop watching people on social media if you're going to be convinced to go down paths that are not right for you.
Is there anything we haven't spoken about yet today that you would like people to know about OnlyFans or about your story?
There's a lot, but I'm trying to see how I can word this. OnlyFans avoids a lot of their responsibility. At least that I think it's their responsibility to deal with what actually happens on this platform. I mean, I know some people don't agree with holding platform owners accountable for what happens, but I think in this case, you can only hide from things for so long, and that anyone who's dealing with a matter that is, complicated, you're not alone in it. You're not the first one to go through it. There's nothing normal about 40-year-old men suing 20-year-olds for millions of dollars. So please reach out to people. You have every right to take control of yourself and your body and your money and your life. Nobody can take that away from you, even though they're going to try to. And I really hope that over time, certain at least restrictions or, takedowns are in place, because I don't think it's fair for these, and it's not just OnlyFans, it's pretty much every sex platform that avoids accountability of what happens there. And this is, it's a breeding ground for traffickers and for exploitation. And you don't know who's trafficked. You don't know who's there willingly. Most of them are not there willingly. And I really hope that over time, some, action is actually taken with stuff like this, because you can't keep hiding behind a mask and calling this, artistic expression, when you're just basically allowing crime to take place on your platform. So that's kind of another goal, I guess. I hope that happens.
Yeah, that's very well said. I think obviously anyone who's exploiting someone should be held accountable. And culturally, for anyone listening to this, you know, even if you're saying, well, I'm not on OnlyFans, I don't consume content on OnlyFans, I don't participate, this is something that's so normalized that we have to be willing to have conversations about what impacts this has in our society. Who is being exploited through these platforms? Why are people being exploited through these platforms? Who's supporting the platforms? From the information we have about OnlyFans consumers, chances are pretty good that someone you know and love is consuming content on OnlyFans. And so culturally being willing to hear stories like this, share stories like this, and have conversations about a world where we don't stand for exploitation and we don't tolerate
Mhm.
exploitation, and what we can all do to build some momentum to move forward so we can have some progress on these issues is
Mhm.
so important.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people just assume, specifically the men that comment on my posts, like, "Oh, all the girls are just whores anyways. They just care about money and they're there by choice." And, do your research. Like, I think this is not something that's spoken about in schools. It's not spoken about on the news. Unless you're actively looking this up, you're really not going to know about it. Why it's hidden, I don't know. But just do your research, because I think, like, I've really just been trying to educate people who are like, well, everyone's there by choice. I'm like, most aren't. And when does it stop becoming a choice? When you try to leave or move on to somebody else or something else, and then, you're stuck in something, is that still a choice? Because to me, it's not. And I also just think shaming people, whether it's for consuming the content or for, participating in making the content, I think shame causes people to stay in the action that is going to just prolong this. And when you tell girls, you're damaged goods, or you tell guys, oh, well, you're disgusting, it's kind of like, okay, well, why are they going to stop then? If you're already, excluding them out of society, they're not going to have any desire to come back in, and they're just going to keep doing what they do. So I also think shame is something that really just, like, it's just not helpful. It's not doing anything to anyone. You're only trying to put yourself on a pedestal above people. You don't know what brought them there. You don't know the story, and you don't know anything that happens because you're not involved. So unless you're involved, you really don't know. Um and yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's very well said. And there's a
Thank
lot
you.
of research to back up the idea that shame keeps people stuck in cycles rather than allowing them to break free from cycles. So, truly,
Mhm.
if we want to reduce the demand for exploitation, if we want to reduce exploitation, if we want to let people know about the harms that are on the platform so they can make an informed decision
Mhm.
regarding their consumption of content, we have to be willing to have these conversations in a
Mhm.
shame free way to help create safety to motivate those
Mhm.
changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining me. Is there
Thank
anything else
you.
you wanted to share that before we wrap up?
My DMs are always open for girls who need help. And just don't know how to navigate this. I always post about that. And then I am writing a book about a lot of this that will come out in 2026. So that's super exciting. But yeah, I just always, open the door for people who are struggling with this, who don't feel like they have anywhere to go or turn. And, they're not in a Miami where they're dealing with a bunch of OnlyFans girls who might be experiencing something similar and they're somewhere else. So yeah, if you are, struggling to leave in a bad contract or just, having a mental health day, like I just am always here for the girlies.
Thank you so much, Taylor. We're so grateful that you're willing to share your story with us, with our listeners, and also
Mhm.
for the work that you are doing to help share the realities of OnlyFans out in the world. And we look forward to seeing your book when
Thank
it comes out.
you.
Best of luck with that.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Consider Before Consuming. Consider Before Consuming is brought to you by Fight the New Drug. Fight the New Drug is a non-religious and a non-legislative organization that exists to provide individuals the opportunity to make an informed decision regarding pornography by raising awareness on its harmful effects using only science, facts, and personal accounts. Check out the episode notes for resources mentioned in this episode. If you find this podcast helpful, consider subscribing and leaving a review. Thanks again for listening. We invite you to increase your self-awareness, look both ways, check your blind spots, and consider before consuming.